We are back for part two on building a one-page marketing strategy. Let's jump back in. So I'll ask
Where that goes.
Ben's question here. Can you talk more about when to focus on one stage versus another per your target user group and how you determine where to focus and the types of activities to be done? Assuming that there needs to be some research done with end users in order to gauge that what part of the journey to focus on re a marketing strategy.
Okay, several years ago, the big topic of the day was something called omni-channel marketing. If you haven't heard of that concept, it's let me I can give you a very good example. In the olden days, okay, when there was maybe just three TV networks, if you wanted to let people know about your product, you would buy an advertisement and some Brillo-haired promoter would appear in the TV commercial saying, "Buy this, this is great," right? And then, so long as you had products on the store shelves, you would go in and that would drive usage. Now, if you think about it today, it's so different. Um, I want to buy a book. I might go into the local bookstore and take a look because I look at the covers. Then I'll go home and I'll go on Amazon, okay, or I'll just order it on Amazon directly and have it delivered. I don't want to schlep a book around, okay. Or maybe what I do is I decide I'm going to read some reviews, okay. Then I go on social and ask some friends. Then forget about books, maybe a more expensive purchase. Then I might ask some questions of other people. What are your experiences? Then I might go into the store, okay. Then I might go into a big box, and then I might and so the channel the process, the journey that I would go on as the prospective buyer of the products or services um, isn't the straight line. It's like all over the place. And everybody sort of goes on a different journey because people are different. So omnichannel marketing is this recognition that you need to make sure that you've mapped out the most likely journeys that a particular target group might go on and make sure that at every touch point you find a way to, well, at every touch point, either trust goes up or trust goes down, right? And you want to make sure that at each touch point, they need what they need. They get what they need to get onto the next stage of their self-appointed journey, right? And so at some touch points, it's more likely that it's going to be an awareness or preference kind of stimulus. At other touch points, it's more likely to be a trial or maybe even a commitment part of the journey. Excuse me. So um, between the different personas, okay, and the different journeys. And I know this is suddenly getting very complex, and I promise one page marketing plan. But if you think about this, you could say, hey, I've only got so much time and efforts. If you're a smaller organization, okay, you can sort of map this out on a piece of paper and say, okay, we're just going to focus here. And once we kind of got that done, then we're going to focus over here. Then we got this, we'll focus over there. And we learn along the way. And we realized that if we just look at that trust curve and the generic things that are underneath awareness, preference, trial, commitment, when you take a then look at the journeys, the journey maps, as they're called, that each person takes on their omni-channel journey. Oh my God, so much jargon. I'm sorry about that. But then you can say, fine, they need more information. We've got white papers and blog posts. They need a demonstration of it. We've got a video. Ah, we've got this, we've got that. So, you know, start at the basics first, okay? With respect to research, this is also something interesting. Thank you, Ren. So, do you do a whole ton of market research and surveys and spend thousands and thousands of dollars and months and months and months? Okay, and then boop, we're going to do it. That's one end. The other end is to say, okay, well, listen, per Google, everything's in perpetual beta, and we're gonna iterate and iterate and iterate really quickly, and we're gonna set expectations that everything's in beta, and we're going to change the service and change how we market. And so that's on the other hand. And there's no market research because the market research is what your prospects are actually telling you. The problem with that, though, is that you don't ever learn about those who choose not to be your prospects. So doing some degree of market research and innovation is actually quite important. On the other hand, you can't let that slow you down. It should accelerate you, right? So that's kind of where my view is on that.
Sorry, just turning on my things. So I have a question about just looking at, search engine, sort of forgetting the terminology here, but in general, and I know we were looking at, when you look up, business growth, you guys pop up immediately, and that's great. But what about when the products or services you offer cover a really wide array of things? How can you get those elements to pop up as being the main thing? I guess to give you a little bit of framework, I work for a nonprofit recreational organization. So we offer a wide arrangement of classes and services for all ages. Um, but our clients are not generally always looking at searching for recreational programs for their kids. They're looking up specifically what their kid wants to do. And so if they're looking for, say, a soccer program, which we offer, and it's great, they're going to get a soccer club or something that is their main focus popping up versus us. So how can you get those elements coming up as a focus in those search engines when it's so diverse?
Okay, so don't want to go fully down the rabbit hole, but that question, Jason, is one that many people, will eventually ask. So I will answer it for the benefit of everyone here. How many people here, and I know there's going to be a lot of people listening after the words, so pardon my question for people who aren't live with us. How many people have the organization has a blog of some sort? Okay, just put your thumbs up if you do. Any kind of blog? Okay, so we got some, etc., some not. Okay. Or some social posts that you do on a social site. The answer to that is yes. Okay. So thank you. So here's the thing. If you, with your team, brainstormed what are the top 50 questions that your target users will ask? What are the top 50 questions? Right? And I don't mean in the case of Jason, what month does soccer start? etc. But generally about whatever your service product organization is about, what are the top questions they ask? Right? If you've got a sales team, etc., ask them what are the top questions that people ask, right? You get a whole bunch of them, and then you write a blog post and or a social post about each of them. Why? Because people are going to search on Google for those kind of things, and so you start to build up, some a head of steam when people are searching for very, very specific things, right? You could search for a whole bunch of stuff about what we do at the Brain Trust. The retreats, the leadership coaching, the training, our courses, etc. But there's a lot of we solve problems. So write about the problems, right? Write about the opportunity. If you're able to do that, it becomes an awful lot easier for you to come up. It's no guarantee. But over time, it's like you're building an army of workers who will never take time off because they'll always be on Google, right? That doesn't guarantee it, but it'll help hugely. So.
Amy asks, related to diversified channels, but focused on different types of buyers, can you speak to any great practices for managing a hybrid strategy of targeting D2C directly and B2B partnerships? Anything to watch out for?
Oh my, D2C. So for those who aren't familiar with the acronyms, that's direct to consumers. And B2B partnerships. This is a very, very, very complex area because the more effective you are in direct to consumer, the more you typically tick off your B2B partners. The more you do on B2B partners, the less interesting your direct to consumer is. We've written a white paper on this particular thing, and maybe Rania, we can find that white paper and send that to Amy on but this is a much bigger conversation. I think the biggest issue here is that um, things are changing dramatically in terms of D2C marketing, and it's not easy because sometimes it involves the particular dynamics of your partners. So I'm sorry I don't have the quick answer to that, but perhaps after you look at the white paper, we could have a higher order conversation on it. I want to also just go back. Manuela asked a question, but would love to have some more about that one-pager marketing plan. So I'm going to answer that by saying this. If you've got, for example, that trust curve with the particular initiatives laid out for awareness, preference, trial, commitment, the question of okay, so what next? There's a little bit more that can fit on the paper. And what I would say is for the key initiatives that you're not doing, okay, almost have like a three-parter. For each of them, what's the goal? What are the specific activities that you need to do, like right now to get that in motion? And then once that's done, what later? What later? Um, so to give you an example, uh, if for preference is to build referrals, okay, you could just put in very simply the goals are uh, to refresh relationships with your biggest plan and increase the number of warm introductions. I know that that might not be relevant as goals for referrals for everybody who might be listening, but get the idea. The activities might be put together an Excel spreadsheet of sources for each name on the list. Start warming, asking for introductions, and here's how specifically. The then later then later part would be ask for LinkedIn recommendations, to repurpose as testimonials, add each referral source into your CRM as in a separate referral pipeline, um, add a marketing automation sequence. So we're now into the weeds, if you will. So the idea is not just to put a bullet, a bunch of bullets under awareness, preference, trial, commitment, but to take a look and say, okay, so this quarter, okay, let's take several of those and let's build them out a little bit. And once you've got that done, it becomes a question of let's make sure we socialize this idea across the team, whether it's a leadership retreat or whether it's a segment session that we might do or that you do by yourselves. Okay, but making sure that everyone's on the same page.
Denny wrote here, I'm not sure if I get the idea of the one pager properly. So I think what I wanted to share, if I may, Randall, is that large organizations can have marketing strategies that are 100 pages long and they go into a lot of detail and execution and what the rollout is and all the SOPs. And there's like a lot of detail. But the idea is how can we keep focused? Just like you can have a very detailed budget, you can have a very high level, one pager. The executives want to see the one pager. So people working with a marketing team, how can they condense their ideas and communicate it very clearly? Is that fair to say, Randall?
I would, but let me also take it from the solopreneur, small business association kind of thing. We do not need hundreds of pages to actually decide what we need to actually get done. We can actually say, hey, listen, here are the 8, 12, 5 initiatives that we are going to do over the next couple of years. Awareness, preference, trial, commitment. That's all we need. Everyone's on the same page, right? We can go a little bit more in detail on some of these things, right? And we don't need to build out huge, mountains of paperwork, et cetera. We can use that energy instead to actually get stuff done, right? And so whether it's a larger organization, whether it's a smaller one, whether it's a for-profit or not-for-profit, I think that there's, um, it's not just a distillation, but it's also the thing that drives.
I want to ask a question, Randall. You
Shoot.
talked about what are those 50 ideas, 52 questions that you can write blogs about. So we work with clients, organizations, marketing teams, leadership teams, Trust Curve would just be an example to help them, facilitate that session to roll it out at a retreat. We also work with individual leaders who want to establish their unique personal brand, right? So you then talk with them about developing their thought leadership and what are those 50 topics that they want to write about that reflect their expertise. So when it comes to an organization and the content they're putting out, like how connected or not connected is the thought leadership and content being put out by the leadership and those like names and faces that want to be seen? Is it separate from like the content of the organization?
I think that the best way to answer that very insightful question, Rania, is to look by example. And at Brain Trust we talk about this as uh, a bit of a brand transfer, if you will, between the two. Um, Everyone knows who Elon Musk is. Love him or hate him, everyone knows what it is, right? He seems to be incredibly active. He seemingly doesn't sleep because of all of his posts on social media and all the other things he's doing, right? And that sort of is the independent brand of a CEO. You take a look at another very, very large organization, Apple, and their CEO, Tim Cook, who will rarely, put a banner out and say, I'm the guy, right? It's all about the organization. And in a certain sense, it's because the cultural choices that each organization has and the particular weight, if you will, that the and profile that the CEO wants to have for themselves, that can decide kind of what you want to do. I think it's a tool. A lot of people might not remember, but President's Choice, which in Canada is a you know brand name from Loblaws, a major retailer, started out as Dave Nichols' President's Choice, and the CEO of this retailer was the pitchman on TV for Dave's President's Choice products, right? Well, that worked out very well until he was sacked as CEO, and all of a sudden there's a bit of a problem, which the company sort of rebranded it just President's Choice, right? And I think that the question of of the thought leadership of the individual versus the thought leadership of the organization is the problem's been solved many times before, particularly in professional service firms where you've got partners who are thought leaders, but gee, the organization as a whole has got thought leadership as well. The main the way to answer that is it's got to be done strategically, not tactically. Because if it's done tactically, opportunistically, you might end up with an Elon Musk on one side, or you might end up with perhaps if Tim Cook had developed a little bit more public profile, he might have been able to use that lever, right? Despite his incredible success as being a leader, but that's just something he chose not to do for whatever reason, right? I think that if we think about how to do it and where it fits in and whose role, um, I will say, certainly in the global law firms, consulting firms, etc., that I've seen that I've worked with over the years, there's some people who actually like doing the content and like doing the thought leadership. Other people like to speak. Other people, they'd rather not be anywhere in the profile. They'd rather be hidden. So it really depends. Not a satisfying, fully satisfying answer, but it really does. It really does. Shoot.
I'm thinking about how we use our content with our clients and in our business development, and we love to repurpose, and we also value transparency with our clients, right? We don't have a lot of secrets, if any. Okay, so help walk me through this question. Walk this way, Randall. Okay, when I think of what goes into the marketing plan, who you are, what you offer, who you offer it to, your campaigns, the different initiatives along the trust curve. Um, I hear a lot of alignment with mission, vision, values, all this different stuff. So my question is the one-page marketing document nuanced to an extent that it's communicating only messages that internally we should see, or would it be appropriate not necessarily to show, like every detail, but like there must be a lot you could share, no? Externally.
That's an interesting one. Okay. I
You
think
were
that
thinking of the trust page infographic, as Dennis called it, but there are many, many, many templates. If you Google one-page marketing strategy doc, there's a million templates that don't involve the trust curve. The trust curve is a brilliant way to organize your thoughts, but need not be the only way one presented visually.
yeah, but I think that what makes it powerful is that when you have a common vocabulary within an organization, and everybody knows if they're going to go into the boss to propose some new initiative, and they know that the boss is going to say, is that under awareness, preference, trial, or commitment? Where does it fit on the trust curve? Everybody knows what that means, and you can answer it kind of, um, you know. I also think that um, I mentioned the 4P framework at the very beginning. There's a whole bunch of other outdated frameworks. And I think that when you rely on Dr. Google to sort of help figure out everything, sometimes you fall into certain traps. I've written about this. Is it time to retire AIDA? There's another framework: attention, interest, desire, action. Well, that's missing a whole bunch of stuff, which trust curve is, and we've got a tip sheet that explores that flawed template as well. To get to your question, Rania, about gee, how much do we open the kimono for our clients? Certainly for our coaching clients, we open the you know quite wide. By the way, we're giving this advice. We actually happen to use it ourselves, right? There's got to be, we can't be talking out of both sides of our mouth. Okay. But we also don't want to um, impose our strategy for our business, the Brain Trust Professional Institute, on anybody else. Okay. How we build business, take, for example, this particular session. Um, the way they're supposed to run is that there's a talking head, or two of them in the case of Ronnie and I, and we've got a PowerPoint that we're going to run everybody through a PowerPoint, and at the very beginning, we're going to say, "Hey, stick around at the very end, and we're going to give you this free bauble of some sort, right?" And at the very end, and we're going to have tons of testimonials, etc. And at the very end, it's, "Gee, if you sign up today, it's not $1 million, it's not 900,000, but for $699,000, you get like this is the template, if you will, for webinars. Yet for some reason we're not using this one, right? It could very well be that's the right template for your particular business. In which case, if we're working with you, we recommend it. But for us, this is the template that works. There isn't going to be an offer at the end. Okay, limited time, fake urgency, right? But on the other hand, what we're doing is we're saying, okay, if we've got a resource, for example, some of the ones that Rania offered up, we didn't have a conversation beforehand about, oh, we've got to make sure to offer this and offer that and offer that. No, it just is organically based on the questions. We figure that if people ask great questions here, it's likely that our prospects will see how we think, and they probably have the same questions. So that's kind of how we do it. Um, I'll also say one other thing. I can't think of um, gee, how many episodes of this do we have altogether? How many recordings do we have? Dozens and dozens and dozens of them. For those who are listening the first time, you can go to the Brain Trust site and you could watch and listen to recordings that we've done on a ton of different topics, not just this one. And in a certain sense, that's also opening the kimono. Um, so, what I would say for people who've got larger groups, or Marita, maybe there's partners or others that you're looping into your web, if you will. Boiling it down and starting with a one-page marketing plan based on the trust curve is so easy to explain to everybody else. It is so easy because there aren't dozens of pages or ridiculously complex processes and everything. It's so easy, and easy gets done, doesn't it? Right?
That's what I appreciate about this is it's achievable. There's like meat I can go away and work with, which is really helpful.
Yeah. Scary thing is this is one of only about a dozen or so frameworks that we use. Okay. Not just marketing frameworks, but a whole bunch of other ones as well. So, well,
Amy, with all the questions, you're peppering us up. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I was hoping to dive into personas for a second, if we could.
sure.
I've had the experience of seeing personas defined not distinctly enough from one another, and I'd love to know if there are any frameworks or ideas, suggestions you have on what kind of could constitute a unique and distinct persona and when to cut it off and say that's not actually our ideal customer and let's put a pin in it.
Okay. You're not going to be satisfied with my answer. I'll tell you right now. And I'll tell you why. I just don't know I just don't know the depth of your background and sorry, your organization's needs and everything like that. So let me give you some thoughts. It depends on how personas are being used. Okay. So if you're putting together, for example, um, the trust curve, okay, just as long as you've got them defined, the general public versus media versus millennials versus exist, like that is probably good enough, right? Yeah, you could put a couple of paragraphs on the psychographic and demographics, etc. Okay. But let's just say you've decided as one of your initiatives to do advertising. Okay. And then the question of what actually goes into the description of the persona and how distinct it needs to be is becomes suddenly very, very important. In which case, it should be okay. Women between the ages of 30 and 45 who do not have children, who are in this geography, who are stressed because of this and that, whatever, who've previously purchased these competitors' products, who don't own their own home, because I'm being silly about all the fineness of it, and eventually you get too detailed. At a certain point, you say, well, why do I care about that? It's not going to impact my messaging. It's not going to impact where. Remember what I said, who are they, where are they, and what's the urgency? So if you're able to sort of use that as a bit of a filter on how deep you need to go in terms of the description, I'd also say this, it sounds like, you're obviously, have some sophistication as a marketer, you're asking great questions. So, you also have to deal with, if you work with any agencies, not a problem. They're sophisticated, or at least they should be. But you also have to deal with a lot of people internally who might not be marketing professionals. In which case, the question of how do we make sure that the personas are actually um, memorable, right? So that everybody beyond just so for example, if you're responsible for marketing in your organization, I'm just asking.
My organization's pre-launch. It's a company I founded, so we have a small team.
Okay, so
Yes, I'm de facto in charge of marketing.
so let's just say that you're in charge of marketing. There's somebody else in charge of customer success,
Okay.
right? And so how they would use personas and how they would remember each of the personas are kind of different, right? If everybody knows, the different personas and what they need, and you don't need to go into crazy detail. The more detail you go into, the less people are going to remember about them. One of the interesting things, certainly when we facilitate this with startups and scale ups, is to say, okay, let's have some fun with the naming. Okay, and it's like, okay, like who's the most annoying customer if we define a customer as being high needy kind of customer, who's the most
Yeah.
annoying customer you've ever had? Everyone say, oh, that'll be Pat, Pat is this and that. Guess what? All of a sudden, Pat personifies that persona. The name of that persona is Pat, right? And so all of a sudden it becomes a lot easier to get people to remember. Okay, and therefore hopefully use whatever their particular role is.
I want to share a thought, then I'll volley it back to you. Randall, we worked with an organization, a huge organization across Canada, and we asked them to list their personas. And Randall, there's like a certain like rhyme. I'm drawing a blank here. It's 4 words. It's like pain, something, fear, something, like to help define the personas. I'm forgetting at this time. I'll get back to you, Amy. But if we ask them to list out what they gave us two personas, two of the list being healthcare related and non-healthcare related. This was their distinction, not ours. And then when we went through it, what are each of their pains? What are each of their worries? What are each of their fears? They were identical. And so I said to them, well, what's the difference here? But they were very, very married to whatever minute nuance they had created between these two like it was just making their marketing and messaging complicated for no reason. They had created this distinction. I don't know if that's helpful, but I hear what you're saying when you say, like, when does one persona end and begin? Like, what are the relevant factors?
Yeah.
That's incredibly helpful if you are able to find those 4 words or whatever you think is kind of that lens to evaluate whether it really justifies being its own persona. That is kind of the clarity I'm looking for.
I'll circle back with you on LinkedIn.
Thank you.
I've been putting different links in the chat as it relates to what Randall's saying. I want to share with you two things and then a few things. Number one, Randall, this is one of Randall's thoughtful, Randall puts out a tip sheet. He's done it for many, many, many years. This is the one he referenced that said, should AIDA be replaced? And when I said there's all kinds of things on the internet, that's the quickest place to go, as Randall said, but we have lots of tools here that actually work for clients. It's interesting. I also wanted to share that we work closely with clients live. We meet with them. We're in touch with them. We do retreats with them. But for those that like doing things on their own pace, we also have courses. So a lot of the content we talked about today is in our digital strategy course. So if you guys want to explore that, just popping that here for you there, no pressure. Happy to answer any questions about that course. And Amy, back to you.
Thank you. Um, Creating urgency. You had a great call out earlier, Randall, to say price is a double-edged sword. I'd love to hear your perspective on other strategies that really do kind of increase the now and urgency factor for different types of customers.
Um, hey Amy, do you have do you have a car?
I do.
Okay, let me just ask. Do you have a boat? Like a yacht?
I do not.
That's right,
Not
you
yet.
do. Here's the
Not
thing.
ever.
How do I increase, as a marketer, how do I increase your urgency to buy a yacht?
You
Right?
don't,
That's right. That's the point.
for
However,
sure.
however, and that being said, okay, what you can do is you could build in tools to sensitize people to the cost of avoidance, the opportunity, as well as the risk angle. So, for example, if people do an assessment, okay, and they think, oh my God, this is costing me such and such. I don't know the nature of your business, but if it has got a service base to it where there's some it's part of the discovery conversation, etc. Okay, what's the opportunity lost if you don't do it? Okay, is this sometimes taking a contrary approach? Is this really a problem? Okay, yes, it is because it does that. Oh, really? Okay, if this problem were solved, what would assessments and tools are really, really powerful. Okay, case studies can help, testimonials can help.
Thank you. That's incredibly helpful. Appreciate it.
Very good. I think I think this has been a boatload of fun.
I want to thank everyone for coming. Lovely to meet everyone and learn about you and your organizations through your questions. If anything we talked about resonate with you, do reach out. And if you want to get invited to these monthly sessions and join our list, you can email us at podcast@randallcraig.com and do connect on LinkedIn.